the capital of the United States of America, the National Reparations League, and we are asking to show us what you got, America. Show us what you got, United States. We are here this morning, and we are here to pick up our check. Show us what you got. Woo! Good morning. Good morning. Woo! What you gonna do for me? How you feel today? Oh, it feels so good to be out in this sun. Just bask in it. Just let it, you know, if you got melanin, it's working on you right now. You have a genetic disposition that allows you to be aligned with this melanin right now. So this sun, and it's just feeding your skin. You don't have to put anything on to protect your skin. It's just gonna feed you this vitamin D and download stuff into you from our creator. Are you getting a download this morning? Just feel that. Just feel that. We are here connecting, and we are here for a purpose. So good morning. We've got some amazing speakers here. We are here to present a message, and we are here to make a demand. You cannot power seeds nothing without a demand. We are here to present our demand. And so this morning, our first speaker up, we've got Brother Cash coming from New York, and he's going to give us some knowledge and some information. And we are here to just absorb and take it in, because it's with this information that we are going to use it and share it and present our message so that people understand what the purpose of reparations is. Before Brother Cash comes up, I got a real quick message. Before I came out this morning, my father said to me, he said, "You're going to a reparations march." He said, "Well, what do you think about this reparations thing? I mean, do you believe in this reparations thing? What do you think about it?" I said, "Dad, imagine if you went to work for a whole year and they didn't pay you. You went to work 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night every single day for a whole year, and you didn't get any money from it. Don't you think at some point you deserve the money? Even if your boss came to you and said, 'Hey, Dad, we don't have it right now, but we'll give it to you later. Our pocket's a little light. We a little light this week.' Don't you at some point think that you deserve that?" I said, "Well, Dad, what if you passed away and you didn't get your money?" And they said, "Oh, well, we're sorry, Mr. Moore. We're sorry you didn't get your money, but there's nothing we can do. But your daughter's here." I said, "Dad, wouldn't you want them to come to me and hand me that check for that year you worked?" He said, "Well, absolutely." I said, "Well, that's what reparations is. Reparations is nothing more than lost wages. At its core, we can talk about atrocities, we can talk about other things that were done that were horrific, but at its core, if you look at it for what it is on its face, it's economic. People worked for 400 years and weren't paid. You don't have to get caught up into well, what if this person is from the Caribbean, and if this person is from Africa, and how many $1 billion did your president send to Ukraine? I don't care how much it's gonna cost. America has your money, and they're sending it somewhere else. So I don't care if you don't, oh, well, we can't get into this person's not a descendant and this person's from the Caribbean. Guess what? Every black person on this continent, for the most part, was touched by the vestiges and the horror of slavery. So guess what? If a couple people get a check that weren't really doing it, they'll be okay. But our community deserves it. The place in which you see our children and our people walking around the very District of Columbia, filled with homeless people, filled with people who are lost, who have lost hope, who don't have a home to go to, who don't have food. This city itself is filled with people who could use a check instead of it being sent over to Ukraine. So if we've got money for everybody else's aid, I think that we should make sure that the people of the descendants of slaves come and get theirs too. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So with that, we're going to bring up Brother Cash. Brother Cash, you ready? All right. New York is in the building.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. To take a longer walk, I was actually born in Chicago, raised in California, Northern and Southern California, Texas for 5 years, and now New York since 2011. Brooklyn, that's where I came here from. 4-hour bus ride. My name is Cash Gaines. I'm Black American on both sides of my family, just for context of the conversation. Y'all see the flag. I want to give a thank you and a shout out to the National Reparations League, first and foremost, for having the second annual reparations rally here in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol. Now, I wanted to take a walk, since we are here in D.C. and since I took a trip to get here, by starting in California, where they recently had a reparations task force. That task force had 2 years to study what Black Californians had been through and suggest proposals. They wrote an 1,100-page report about what Black Americans have been through and what they're still suffering from to this day, including my family and myself. Now, Washington, D.C., where do they stand in that? D.C. has a local bill as well to study reparations. It's B-25-152. What does that bill say? It says even more interesting things than California did, and even more interesting things than the city of San Francisco, which has its own task force as well. But it says that they would create a 9-member task force to study over a certain period of time what people in Washington, D.C. have survived and suggest reparations proposals. But unlike California, something new that they suggest is creating a reparations fund, where from its outset starts collecting funds from tax dollars already being generated in the District of Columbia that would go specific for cash payments for Black Americans once they understand how much we're owed. I wish California would have had that reparations fund set up when they created AB 3121. So shout out to Washington, D.C. for being ahead of the curve. Unfortunately, though, they're talking about using DMV fees and sales tax, a portion of that, to go into a fund for reparations to pay Black Washingtonians. That makes no sense, because Black people are disproportionately the ones that pay into sales tax and disproportionately the ones being fined. 17 times more likely to receive a moving violation in a Black neighborhood if you're Black American. 17 times. 65% of the moving violations are against Black Americans, when they're only 43% of Washington, D.C. So that's disproportionate. And you'll hear about mass incarceration issues later. I even heard the statistic, 91% of the prison population is Black American. That's disproportionate. So what's the solution to that part of the problem? The part where they suggest sales tax in the DMV? Many people from DC as well as outside the state mentioned how you could use an estate tax. People have heard about Evanston, Illinois, which has its own issues as far as being considered a reparations claim. Some call it a state act of atonement, right? But they were using marijuana tax dollars to head towards cash payments for Black Americans. Now they've extended it to include housing. If someone sells a house for over $1 million, 1% of the profits from that sale goes into a fund specific for Black American cash payments, direct cash payments, and lineage-based, to be clear. So DC can learn from that example. There were some other points I wanted to mention before I pass Mike. Wanted to say, people mentioned the real estate tax, the estate tax, and Metropolitan PD. The MPD can have its budget reduced to go towards reparations. That was one of the main revolutionary points that was mentioned in the 6-hour hearing just to speak about this bill even being passed in DC. In that same 6-hour hearing, we learned about how Black Americans in Washington, DC have the highest lineage wealth gap in the entire nation. That was crazy when I heard that. And also the highest rate of Black displacement. So it's now, it's reparations now, before all Black Americans are gone from the area. One more thing I want to mention about the DC bill, and then I'll wrap up. DC, when the bill was first written, it wasn't even about holding the government accountable. It was about using the government to research private industry and their hand in slaveholding. So right now, the DC bill says that they're going to create a slave era database that shows us which of these corporations that still exist to this day had a hand in our enslavement and have to have a hand in our repair. And I just want to shout out DC, because this is a pilot program. It ain't true reparations until it's at the federal level, until all of us receive our 40 acres and an update to the mule, right? As well as our cash payments. for 6 to 7 generations, some of us, of unpaid wages, mandatory labor. And the fact that there's still enslavement to this day under the 13th Amendment, right? So we want it to be a reinvestment in Americans. That's what reparations is. And lastly, I'll say this. Anyone who has a constitution, I got one right here in my back pocket. The First Amendment to the Constitution says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. It's built right into the First Amendment that we're owed our reparations. If you stand in the way of an American using his constitutional rights to get his grievances from the government, it's treasonous. You are un-American. Thank y'all for letting me speak. Peace and reparations. I'll pass back to Michelle with that. Lineage-based direct cash payments. Thank you.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. And thank you, Brother Cash. Thank you. And that's absolutely correct. There is a demand on the floor. DC is putting in the work. California has laid the ground. Can you tell me how we've lived in this country and been on this continent for so many years, and there's never by the federal government been a study of the impact of slavery on the United States of America? This is a country that studies things like bluebirds in Midwestern states, and baboons in Zaire, and the effects of certain chemicals on children in Africa and coal mines. This country has spent money studying wildlife and whether bees can cross-pollinate with other insects. And listen, there's hours and hours of Smithsonian footage and hours of agricultural research done by this country. But no one has ever said, let's see the effects of what slavery has done to the African population in America. Let's see what the impact is. Was there any vestiges? Was there, can we correlate any of the issues that took place on a plantation to the people that we're looking at right now? Is there any way that we can connect the dots of what happened then to what happened now? Or are we just looking at a people with issues and all of their problems are just self-imposed? I mean, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. What's wrong with black people? Black people are lazy. Black people don't like to work. As soon as we set them free and they didn't have to work for free, now it's saying they don't want to work at all. Like, this is just insane. What is wrong with these people that like drugs, that are super criminals, and that like are predators, super predators? What's wrong with these people? Did anyone ever stop and ask the question, if any of this is true, how did they get this way? What has been taken? What has been stolen? What has been broken and perverted in a people that they are so out of alignment and out of order? That's what's wrong with a lot of what we're seeing in our culture right now. There's out of order, out of alignment with who we are, with our Creator. How did this happen? What are the vestiges of slavery? And it's amazing that question has not been answered or been funded. The research has not been funded. That's problematic. So we're going to move on to our next speaker. We're going to hear from Brother Derek from Virginia. But I just really, it blows my mind. And Brother Cash hit the nail on the head. We're actually only at the point of having a conversation about studying what has been done to black people in this country. We have not even asked the question. It didn't even deserve a discussion, a debate. It wasn't even brought up. We've had a congressional caucus full of black people running around, but it has only been brought up yearly by Congressman John Conyers. But outside of him, The conversation was really shied away from by the people that we send to represent us. And why is that? Why is it okay to silence this discussion? Why is it okay for people to push back and say, no, we don't want to have that conversation right now. Let's have it later. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the time. We have come to collect a check and we want it now. Cut the check. Brother Derek, you ready? Let's go.
Thank you, Sister Reese. Appreciate you. And last time I seen Sister Reese, that little beautiful baby right there was still in her stomach. So let's give a round of applause for that and a shout out to her. There's our future generations there. How you doing, everybody? I'm Derek. I'm with the DMV Freedmen. I'm a reparationist. I want to give a shout out to the National Reparations League for throwing on this event. And what I like to talk about is wealth. Wealth is the foundation, really, of the reparations program, the reparations movement, the need for reparations. One thing I'd like everybody to take away from this conversation is that wealth begets wealth. Remember that. Wealth begets wealth. You cannot build wealth without wealth. It takes cement to build bricks. It takes dough to make bread. Wealth begets wealth. So I'm going to start off talking about the racial wealth gap, or we prefer to call it the lineage wealth gap, which is the easiest way for people to actually track or monetize the harms that were done to us, right? It's the easiest way to actually look at the accumulated disadvantage, to look through the wealth of America. So I'm going to start off there. So with regards to the racial wealth gap for American freedmen, that is Black Americans, descendants of U.S. chattel slavery, the wealth gap scenario starts off in 1865. 1865, formerly enslaved persons in the United States, also known as the freedmen, are emancipated, and they're promised 40 acre land grants by the U.S. government. As we all know, Lincoln was assassinated, and when Lincoln was assassinated, the vice president was next in order for secession, which was Andrew Johnson, and Andrew Johnson became president. When Andrew Johnson became president, he decided to rescind Special Field Order 15, which was the actual documentation that said that the freedmen were owed 40 acres. What a lot of people don't know is that there were some freedmen that did actually receive land. The majority of those who received land, as small as they were, had to give the land back. The rest never received the land at all. The deal that was made by the U.S. government was to give the freedmen a bank in replacement of the 40 acres and the mule. That comes later. So, the Freedmen Bank is established in 1865, the same year of emancipation. And the bank is set up as a savings bank. Now listen very closely because this is important, okay? The Freedmen's Bank was never set up as a lending institution. It was set up as a bank for savings. Now, anybody who knows anything about banking understands that banks, for them to build wealth, they must take in both deposits and also issue loans to the depositors. But if the bank is only meant for savings and does not have the ability to issue out loans to depositors, there's an issue with building wealth. Okay? In other words, a black bank cannot build wealth for itself unless it has the capital to do so. Deposits are extremely expensive for banks, and loans are a necessary for them to build wealth. So, moving on, The Freedmen Bank did pretty well regardless of that. They actually, in a 10-year span, they accumulated or dealt with $75 million in 1865, which is equivalent to about $1.5 billion today in a 10-year span. Okay? Now here's where the plot gets thick. The chairman of the Freedmen Bank, last name is Cook, he's a white man, decides that he's going to take the deposits from the bank without the knowledge of the freedmen and invest them in high-risk investments behind the backs of the people. The investments are failures. The loans are high-risk loans that fail. They're pretty crappy. And it causes the bank to actually close in 1874. With that, $3 million of freedmen money was lost in that, which is equivalent to about $81 million today, just under that, okay? So I'm laying this all out so that people can understand when we talk about the wealth gap, how this actually started and where the money is that we're talking about that was lost over time, accumulatively. So as a result of all of this, and the fact that you have state-sanctioned terrorism by the Democrats or Southern whites, segregation ensues. Between 1900 or 1910 and 1934, approximately 130 black banks rise and sprout out of the circumstance of segregation. Blacks could not bank or get loans from white institutions, so for there, black bankers started to establish black banks. Now, we all have talked about owning our own banking institutions, buying black empowerment, right? All right, sorry about that for the feedback. The issue is that the banks themselves were shut out of the major markets. And banking is a system, right? It's a network. So the banks did provide a service because there were people who needed loans or they needed to deposit money in the banks, but the banks didn't have a large amount of capital to provide loans. Okay? So as a result, the banks serve their purpose, but what it does is it stunts the growth of the freedmen people, the black American people. You can't actually grow the wealth because the banks themselves don't have the ability to grow themselves, right? And the banks rise up as a result of being locked out of markets due to racial discrimination. That's essentially what happens. So we're gonna move head forward into the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. What ends up, let me scroll back for just a second. Okay, so in 1865, while the freedmen did not get their 40 acres and a mule, the U.S. government decided in 1862, a few years prior to the Freedmen's Bank being established, to issue out land grants. The act is called the Homestead Act of 1862. In that act, they decide that they're going to issue out 160-acre land grants to white immigrants. 160 acres. 160 acres. The freedmen were asking for 25% of that, right? And had that taken away. So the government undergirds white immigrants with 160 acres and new land plots that are primarily in the western portion of the United States as the United States is expanding. So when you start talking about California's, Kansas's, Gold Rush, New Mexico's, these are where the land grants, as an example, were issued. So in order to establish wealth, you must have wealth, right? So I'm going to recap for just a second. The intention of Andrew Johnson to prevent the freedmen from having land was intentional to prevent the freedmen from having wealth to put into the banks, so the banks could utilize the wealth and issue loans to people to actually build wealth. That's what that situation was. So as we get into the early 20th century, the 1930s, the 1940s, the U.S. government decides that it's going to issue out three pivotal programs that they exclude primarily the majority of blacks from. This increases the racial wealth gap and cements white middle class America, which did not exist before then, particularly in the suburbs. Those three programs are the Homestead Act, which I just mentioned, the New Deal, which came with a bunch of programs and incentives, and then the GI Bill. But the New Deal essentially came in with an overhaul universal program, or overhaul of universal programs that required for Democratic representatives to vote, right, on the behalf of the Republicans to pass the New Deal, which they did successfully. Part of that was that in the South, the Republicans or the Northerners would look past the racial discrimination that they were going to put on blacks. So with the New Deal, one of the things is that if you were in the industries of domestic work, meaning if you were a maid or something like that, or if you were a farmer, you were excluded from any of the programs. 70% of the freedmen, black Americans, were domestics and farmers. So this was a strategic, methodical way to actually cut freedmen out from, again, establishing and building wealth. With the GI Bill, which comes a little bit later, not much, around the time of World War II, you got a bunch of World War II vets that are coming back, particularly young men, both white and black, and many of which were looking to go to college or to establish their lives. So the government decided that they were going to subsidize these new soldiers or veterans and their families. So what the government did was, prior to 1930, you had to have 50% of the money down to buy a house. Most of us, I didn't know that, right? Prior to 1930, you have to have 50% of the money down to buy a house. So what the government does is basically they subsidize mortgagers or home buyers, homeowners, and they basically decide that they're going to take on the risk. So as an example, where you may have been paying $50 a month for rent, let's say, in an inner city apartment, you could move out to the suburbs and pay $35 a month for a mortgage, and the rest would be subsidized by a bank, the same way that we do mortgages today. You put down a certain portion, the bank subsidizes you for the rest, you pay it over 30 years. That's where that came from. That actually came from the process of the New Deal and predatory practices to try to cut freedmen blacks out from essentially being able to take advantage of building wealth. Okay? So with the GI Bill gave these vets an opportunity to come back into the country, get free education, buy new homes, become new homeowners, right? And they strategically, systematically cut blacks out of that opportunity. So it forced blacks to rent, which you don't build wealth. You build wealth through equity in a house. So these folks were buying these houses for pretty low amounts of money, being subsidized by the government. And then in 10 years, 20 years, they formed a bunch of equity in the house and they paid their houses off. But you're still renting. So you're not building any wealth. Actually, you're building wealth for somebody else. And so that's how that went. In a very condensed, although I know this is kind of dragged out, but in a very condensed explanation of how the wealth gap and these different instances happen that have exacerbated a cumulative disadvantage with regards to wealth gap and wealth of a particular collective group in America, essentially. Okay, so I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna conclude there because I just really want to give a breakdown of kind of the history of the racial wealth gap. There's a lot of talk about the wealth gap. People pretty much understand at the end of the day that we're owed But a lot of times the historical background is the part that people don't really get. They get the numbers, they get we're owed, but they don't know exactly like, okay, well, how did this all happen, right? So I'm gonna give a few little data points and then I'm going on to get right here. So for some of the data points, just to support the information with regards to the wealth gap, 25% of white households are worth a net of $1 million or more. Okay, 25% of white households in the U.S. are worth $1 million or more. In contrast, you have about 4% of black households, freedmen households, which are worth $1 million net or more. Okay, 4%. You have 4% of black households that are worth $1 million net or more. You have 1 million white households that are worth $10 million or more. Okay? So in America, as y'all can see, the wealth is concentrated particularly at the top or the middle top end. Right? To give you an idea of how small our wealth is, whites own about $124 trillion of household wealth. Blacks own around $2.5, $2.6 trillion in household wealth. All of the black wealth, there are approximately 3 million black businesses in the U.S. right now. If you were to take all of those black businesses and look at their combined sales revenue, it would be approximately 1/3 of the sales of Walmart. Okay, so let me say that again. Okay. So there are 3 million black businesses in the United States. If you combined all of those businesses' sales revenue, it would be approximately 1/3 of the sales of Walmart by itself. Okay? That's all of the black wealth, equivalent to 1/3 of the sales of Walmart. With regards to households, white household wealth is around $171,000 in each household. In contrast, black household wealth is around $17,000. Okay, so white household wealth is roughly 10 times the amount of black household wealth. Okay, so, but here's the interesting thing. So a lot of times people want to blame not being able to accumulate wealth on culture. They want to blame it on habits. They want to blame it on fathers not being in the home, things like that, right? What people need to understand is that they are looking at race the wrong way. The easiest way to look at race is to actually look at wealth with regards to households. When you compare a freedman kid who comes from a family with the same income and wealth level as a white kid, from a similar economic situation, rates of college are the same, rates of employment and work hours are the same, rates of welfare usage are the same. There are no differences. Literally, there are no differences. The difference is the fact that one kid's family had the opportunity to develop wealth over several generations and the others didn't. So you'll find that you have people making the same income, right? But yet our white counterparts have much more wealth because the wealth has accumulated and wealth calcifies over time. So I'm gonna just say this by closing out. Calcifies over time, that's right. So therefore, when we talk about race in terms of genetic accounting of these differences or a cultural account of differences, we're looking at this from the wrong perspective. The racial wealth gap is the way to understand race. It is the most, it's the best method. It's the most solid method to look at race and to understand the cumulative disadvantages that have happened from generation to generation. So to glimpse at one of the far-reaching consequences of race inequality, the easiest way to see this is by looking at comparative net worth or wealth. No other measure captures the legacy of a cumulative disadvantage incurred through the racialization of the American freedmen and the accumulative disadvantage of race, or the accumulative advantage, pardon me, of race for white Americans. And with that, I will conclude. Thank you for letting me speak. Back to Sister Reese. Thank you.
Now that's power. Knowledge is power. And there's no disputing the fact that when it comes to the families, the economic disparity of wealth in this country, the numbers speak for themselves. Wealth was stolen. Reparations is repaying the wealth that was stolen. When you look at the fact that the government told people of color that they were, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. You know what? Let's take that out. Let's shake. Can we take a moment and shake out all of the programming that has been put inside our mind, the negative information and the false information that's been put inside? We are not people of color. We are black people. We are African descent. We don't have to be lumped in with anybody else because we stand on our own as who we are, the people of who have been subjected to a very specific experience here on this continent that no one else can lay claim to. And not that we're trying to get into a race to the bottom of who's been treated the worst, but no one has been subjected to what black people in this country or in this soil have been subjected to. So before we lump ourselves in with anybody else and align ourselves, we stand first on the fact of who we are. We are the descendants of slaves or the enslaved, and that we are standing here as people of African blood, who were brought to this country against our will and had our freedom and our labor stolen. That's the first line of defense. And we are the descendants of freedmen. Freedmen. It's a legal status. It's a definition. It means something. We stand on that. Okay, so then back to Brother Derek's point. When we look at the numbers and we see the disparity, we see the fact that we were systematically cut out from every piece of pie that was supposed to be the American pie. We were systematically cut out from it based on this color. See, when you get into people of color, only this color was the color that was cut out systematically across the board. They said, oh, if you're a black farmer, okay, nope, you don't get this. You can't get in this line for this long. Oh, our GIs are coming back from war. Wonderful. We're going to pay for you guys to have a home so you can have a family. But not that color. You can't get in this line either. Okay, so every time a line was created so that wealth could be distributed in this country, money was given away in this country. Oh, you want to go explore the Wild Wild West? You want to go explore a place? Okay, great. Come and get some money from the American government. But not this color. And so we can't get into a line and line up with everybody else and talk about people of color, because for some reason, when it comes to this color, they seem to cut the line off. And so we can't just line up with everybody else because there's been a specific experience based on the color of our skin, okay? And so when we go to get the check that belongs to us and get the reparations, it's for this color right here. It's us standing and saying, hey, you know what? That exclusion you did, all of that's telling people to get to the back and you're not welcome. We're here to collect that check. And it's crazy. It's crazy when you look around and you see the disparity, 1.7 million or 1.2 million for white homes and families, and then $17,000 in the wealth of a black family. It's just jarring. It's jarring. And there's instances across history where literally land was stolen. People had their farms taken. People who were who were enslaved went back and bought farms, were able to sharecrop and buy farms, and then somebody walked into the deeds office and took their name off the land, or forced them to sign over their land and told them, we're going to lynch you and run you out of town and burn you up and burn your land up if you don't get out of here. Black people have had their wealth stolen. Even myself went through it with my grandmother's home with what we call reverse mortgage. See, there's a couple things going on in this country. There's something called predatory lending, and that's where they look at you and say, not your color. We're giving out loans and we want people to buy homes, but not your color. And then they go up to another group of people and say, hey, you know what? You've worked 50 years at Chrysler. You paid off your house. You own it free and clear. I want to give you a loan. And what only thing about this loan is that when you die, it goes back to the bank. Well, why is that? Because they realize that you've accomplished the American dream despite every obstacle that's been put up to block you and to stop you. Somehow you've been able to overcome all of that. And look at you, you're a homeowner. Oh, wait a minute, you're gonna pass that down to your children? No, you're not. Hold on, I've got a product for you. Let me loan you, let me give you a loan for pennies on the dollar, where you give me your house that's worth $250,000 and I loan you $70,000 because you're a little old and you need a little help paying for your prescriptions. So I'm gonna do a loan for you. I'm gonna do you a favor, and you just sign that house on over to me so that your kids and grandkids don't have it, because we don't want them to be able to inherit grandma's house. We want them to have to start over every generation. We don't want them to pass down that house so that they don't have to walk into a bank and get a mortgage. We want them indebted every chance they get, so that your children turn around and instead of inheriting a house, they have to work. And guess what? Wages aren't going up, but they're gonna work a job and buy the same house that grandma lost for $70,000. Now they're gonna come in and get a mortgage for it, and guess how much the house costs now? $300,000, $400,000, and guess what? It's the same house grandma and them sold back in the day for $30,000 to the bank. And so then our wealth is being preyed upon, okay? So we're talking about back in the day, well, maybe still, redlining, eminent domain, the land being stolen, and now we're talking about predatory loans on the other side, the reverse mortgage side. So baby, across the board, we're looking at generational wealth in our community being taken systematically, and it's a problem, and we want to check. We are coming back for what has been taken. It is not okay. It is not okay. The American dream will no longer be deferred. We are coming to collect what's ours. And so with that, we got Brother BT next up from the ATL. Brother BT, are you ready? Let's get it.
Hey, what's going on, family? Peace and reparations. Peace and reparations. Yeah, we all talking about the fun, but this is a real topic, so it's not a comfortable conversation for a lot of people. We're often told to get over it, but no one else has to get over anything that happens to them. You know, they never forget 9/11, which was a one-day event, and RIP to those people. But we gotta forget what happened to us for 244 years in the country, 352 when it wasn't even established altogether. So, and this is still going on to this day. But we can't talk about it. It's cliche. How dare you? I never will let this country forget what they've done to us and how they've mentally brainwashed us into thinking that we just need to work harder. And that's why everyone from all over the world can immigrate here and live the American dream while they've sanctioned our American nightmare. So we're done playing. And I think the education is so important because they've done an excellent job at miseducating not only us, but everyone who has came through Ellis Island and the ones who was there before too. So we have to really get out there. That's one of the biggest pushbacks for people who are easily debunked. They just don't know everything that has happened to us. They think it was just y'all slaves, it was ended, boom, that's it. Not taking account for the convict leasing and the Jim Crow and the redlining, like Sister Reese talked about, the alligators, babies being fed to alligators. Natchez, Mississippi, the Devil's Punch Bowl, 20,000 Black Americans killed by angry poor whites. That was allowed, and it actually changed the river red from the blood of our ancestors. But we can't talk about it. Man, go on with that. All right, I got a few points I'm gonna touch. A white high school dropout makes more than a black person with a bachelor's degree. So when we talk about inequality, it's things we have to address and that we're not gonna be okay with. When enslavement ended, our ancestors were demanding 25 cents. It's either per day or an hour. Don't quote me. To build the railroads, and we said we weren't going to do it if they weren't going to pay that. So that's what they did. They brought in the Chinese, who agreed to do it for 10 cents a day or hour. So it's historically been our government weaponizing immigration for a cheaper labor class. And they always say we lazy and don't want to do the work. No, we'll do it. We just ain't gonna do it for these prices that these people will. Because we built this country. Just like me, a lot of y'all families have fought in every single war ever in this country. But we get told we not even American, or somebody who been here 60, 50, 70 years is more American than us, telling us to go back to Africa, and we ain't never even been there. So we gotta really understand this. The most sinister thing has been sanctioned by our government. This is a specific debt owed to a specific group of people. That's why when you talk about reparations, the conversation tries to get all lives matter. And all lives do matter. I never said they don't. But all lives didn't build the biggest country, most powerful country in the world for free. So we're not gonna play with people when they try to make us feel like this is our fault for the situation we're in as a whole. We're not gonna let them bring in the unicorns and the few of us who have gained success and try to say, well, this person's doing good, why aren't y'all? And they really manipulative in their practices. And also the whataboutism is a big issue, because they always gonna bring up the little kids in Indonesia or what's going on somewhere in Uruguay, and they won't talk about us. And it's very interesting. Often when I talk to white folks about things like this, I remind them that they always question them why the country is so bad, why all this bad stuff is happening. And I tell them because it's never addressed its original sin. Until they address us, things will never go right in this country. And that's on God. So I mean, like, what are we talking about? How dare you say, why is it like this, when the very foundation of this thing was built in our blood? And then they play with us as if this country was built by immigrants, when a lot of these historic buildings right around us right now were built by our people for free, including the White House. It was built by enslaved people, and 200 of them died during that, and they didn't even give them a proper burial. They just continue to brought more enslaved people to build on top of it. So we don't even know the names of our ancestors who died doing that. And they want to act like we lazy? Come on, man. Let me see here. Hold on. All right, yeah. They always try to hit you with my family didn't own slaves. And, well, it doesn't matter if your family didn't own slaves or if you weren't here during slavery, because when you signed up to immigrate to this country, you signed up to inherit this country's debt. This is a specific debt owed to a specific group of people, and it's the simple justice claim. Everyone else has gotten reparations, even people we didn't harm, like Ukraine. And even the Jews have received more reparations from Obama and every other president thereafter. I got a Navajo Indian friend. He got $200,000 when he turned 18 years old. And he bought a house in 1985. That house today is worth $400,000. So when they say just work harder and do this, when everyone else has gotten boots to pull themselves up by with the bootstrap, we're not gonna let them leave us barefoot And we're not gonna act like because some of us are have done well or doing well that they're not old too. Oprah is old. P. Diddy, everybody is owed reparations, no matter how much. If your family was enslaved in this country, so I don't like how people try to deny that as well. They're trying to create a permanent underclass out of us, and we just can't allow it. And that's why they put businesses in our country, in our communities, predatorily. And we used to have our own beauty supply products. We had our own fried chicken places, but now immigrants have come and they are selling us everything you could imagine. And that is also with government intervention. It's not just by happenstance. This is the government's responsibility. And if you immigrated here, you're entitled to the debt. Now, I will say, because the trauma and the things that have happened to us have been generational. It's taken hundreds of years for them to put us in this state. So why can't the reparation be hundreds of years and generational? And that also will address when people say it's going to make inflation higher too. If we spread them payments out, it won't. So I don't want to hear that. And also, we got modern monetary theory, MMT, which also would make sense. So it's nothing people can say. It's all easily debunked. And most people who are staunchly against reparations, they're just not educated on it. So we have to just continue to stay the course and teaching our people why this debt is owed and why everyone else is going to have to pay up. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother BT. So we are here.
We are here.
We are here
We are here.
to collect a check,
Collect the check.
to make a demand. Power sees nothing without a demand. With you, whether you're in a lawsuit and somebody rear ends your car, your attorney goes to them and makes a demand. This person has been injured and this is what you owe them. That is how this works in our country. You have to submit your demand. And that's what we're here for. Today, we are here to submit a demand. And we have an amazing, amazing organizer of the National Reparations League who has done the work so that we could be here today and share in this event. It's an amazing, wonderful event, and we thank him. And today we're going to hear from him. Brother Rashad has put the work together, boots on the ground. He has done the work so that we could be here and let our voices be heard and make sure that our demand gets to where it needs to be. And so that is why we are grateful to be able to hear today, on this moment, at this time, this man for this hour, Brother Rashad Singleton.
Big payback.
Peace and blessings, family.
Please.
Giving all praises to the Most High, my Lord and Savior, Yeshua. Thank you so much for coming out. There is no other place in the world that I would rather be than right here in the nation's capital, talking about the justice that is owed to the American descendants of chattel slavery and Jim Crow.
Wake it up.
I'm here to tell you right now that normally a 7-foot black man wouldn't be in DC talking about reparations. I will be talking about basketball, blocking shots, dunking on people. Well, I'm here to tell you none of that means anything when it comes to reparations. They told me too, not just LeBron James, they told me too, shut up and dribble.
Yeah.
Shut up and dribble. Why are you always talking about reparations this and reparations that? Why don't you shut up and dribble? Well, you know what I tell white America? Shut up and pay reparations. Shut up and pay reparations.
Yeah.
Look around you. Everything you see It's blood money. Blood money built this city. Blood money built this country. No need of wondering how the United States got so great. Every time you look at a black American, that's how it got so great. We are not here to play with you. We are not here to entertain you. We are here to get our check. We are here to finish the work of the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King. When he was getting ready to fight in the Poor People's Campaign, he said, we coming to Washington to get our check. And guess what? We here. We here, Dr. King. We ain't forgot what you said, Dr. King. Your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, we are here, Dr. King, to finish the job.
Yes.
Understand something, family. This is the last generation that won't see reparations. We are going to get reparations right now. There ain't gonna be no more wishing and praying. We tried holding hands with white folks for 60 years.
Don't work.
We sung Christian songs with y'all.
Don't work.
We sung Kumbaya. We worked on your jobs. But none of that got us to the point where we at now. Because guess what? When everybody else went through something, you didn't tell them to go vote. You didn't tell them, oh, y'all just need some better programs. You gave the European so-called Jewish people reparations. When you harmed the Native Americans, you gave them reparations. When you took the slave master's slaves, you gave each slave master reparations.
Come on, man.
Hear me, President Biden. You got some black people here today that's here to get their money. We're here to get reparations now.
Reparations now.
The last generation. It's on us. Totally fearless. The way I feel right now, family, we have to understand white people are only afraid of two things: loss of life and loss of profit.
Come on.
Loss of life and loss of profit. Now, we're not here to advocate violence today, but we are here to tell black Americans how to spend your money.
That's right.
If an organization, if a company does not care about your reparations, then why are you spending your money with them?
Come on.
If a politician is not for reparations, is not for your justice, then what are you voting for them for? The confusion has to stop. There will be no Stockholm syndrome with this generation. We do not reward people that are not for our reparations.
Come on.
So the way I feel right now, family, Black America, I'm telling you right now, don't buy right till they make it right.
Come on.
Don't buy right until they make it right. You better enjoy this black money while you can, white businesses, because there's a storm coming. You ain't getting another black dollar until you pay reparations.
Reparations.
Read it and weep. I came from Florida. People came from Georgia. And we're right here on the nation's front door to let them know, if it don't buy white until they make it right.
Come on.
One last thing I want to tell my brothers and sisters. I want you to tell you, hold on. I lost a lot of good brothers this year. Some to suicide. Black Americans are losing their mind, and we know how much of it is financial.
Come on.
We ain't even supposed to be in the position we in.
Right.
We ain't even supposed to be going through depression. We're not supposed to be all this frustration. We're supposed to have 40 acres and a mule. We're supposed to have our own businesses. We're supposed to be practicing group economics and entrepreneurship. So brothers, sisters, hold on. We're going to get reparations. I know you're tired. I know you can't sleep at night. I know you're wondering how you're going to pay that bill. Hold on. Don't give up. You got some soldiers around you. You got some warriors out here today that's fighting for you. Hold on. Reparations is coming. Reparations now. God bless.
Yes.
give a hand for Sister Reese. Let's give it. Mighty turned up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
DC, can you hear me?
Yeah.
United States, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Brother Rashad. Thank you, Brother Rashad. Thank you. And this is the purpose for which we gather, to make sure it is understood unequivocally, without a doubt, unquestionably, that you understand that there is a demand, that there was supposed to be a check paid, that 40 acres and a mule was put into legislation, that it was voted on, that it was authorized, that it was then retracted. And that land and that Freedmen's Bank and that Freedmen's land, they turned it into a memorial. If you take a train, you can go there and see it. They've made a cemetery on top of the land that was given to Black Americans. They bankrupted our bank and defunded it, and they took back the land. All of that was Indian given, if you use that phrase, but it was wrongfully taken back. We want it, and we're here to collect what is owed. And you know what? It's immensely personal for us. It's immensely personal for me. I stand here before you as a mother. Last year, I stood here before you pregnant, and what I've realized is that I'm raising a little Black girl in America. And there's a lot of influences out there that are going to try to tell her who she needs to be and how she needs to show up. There's going to be another Cardi B telling her to F with him and get some money. Baby, my daughter doesn't need to F with somebody and get some money. If you give her reparations, she's going to be able to build a family and understand how to pick a husband based on the qualifications of who he is as a man and his integrity. She doesn't have to lay on her back to get some money because Cardi B said so. She's not looking at me and picking and choosing based on, oh, this one has a nice car. Oh, this one. She doesn't have to be in a club being a stripper. That's not an option for her because she's raised better than that, because we've got a foundation, because she's not scrounging for the bottom of the barrel, the pennies and the crumbs that are on the floor. She comes from an economically, upwardly mobile, powerful, successful family, and that's not how we get down. She understands that. That's the difference between people who have been repatriated and made whole. The problem you're seeing with the people right now is they haven't been made whole. Brother Rashad said people are losing their lives. People are committing suicide. People have given up hope because the money's not there. They can't figure out how to make ends meet. They are losing their mind trying to figure out. The prices keep going up. The income keeps going down, and they can't make it work. And so people are walking away. They're losing hope in this society because their income and their wealth was systematically stolen, and they deserve to have it back. We are here to make a demand. We are here to collect a check so that my daughter doesn't have to be somewhere talking about F with him and get some money. I'm not interested in Cardi B raising my daughter. I'm not interested in the rappers and the programming that's telling her what she's got to be and the things that she needs to showcase and show off and be naked and all that. I don't want that for her. And if we have our reparations and are able to rebuild our community and rebuild our people and rebuild their minds and rebuild our education system and teach them better, that's not going to be an option. So this is immensely personal. We are here to collect. Cut the check. And with that, we have Brother Josh here. Brother Josh, are you ready? Wait, I'm sorry. We've got Brother Mark here. Brother Mark, no slight to Brother Josh. I got you. You up next. All right. Brother Mark.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Don't buy white
Make it right.
till they make it right. Don't buy white. Don't buy white. Don't buy white. Don't buy white. Don't buy white till they make it right. That is the battle cry this afternoon. Don't buy white till they make it right. Which they very well can. They're very well funded. America has no problem with the pocketbook. When it comes to everybody except black people. Then they got short arms and deep pockets. But I'm here to tell you and everybody under the sound of my voice that we are here to make a demand and collect our checks. We want our money, and we're not going to stop until we get it. Now, the problem is, when you look at white America and what they have done to create the wealth that has been invested into this country and the greatness of America, it was all blood money that was created on the backs of free labor and enslavement of African and descendants of Africans for 400 years. And when you talk about the horrific, barbaric legacy of American slavery, as a white person, I wouldn't want to look at that either. That's a hard thing to look at. It's hard to look in the mirror when you sleep at your big home in your nice soft bed with all your cars and realize that the people who helped you get that are languishing in the ghettos on the other side of the street and the other side of the city, suffering, starving to death, dying, as well as their children and their relatives and family members. It's not something I would want to look at if I was a white American either. So I understand that. But as a American man who is the descendant of African enslaved men, a descendant of slaves who were considered no more than chattel in this country, I speak with supreme confidence and righteous indignation when I say that we want our check. Because this shame that I carry daily, this shame of the horrific legacy and the barbaric history of American slavery is something that I can relate to because I carry that burden every day. When you talk about the complexion of rejection, when you talk about my skin is my sin, I can relate to that. I can relate to the deepest disgrace ever branded people whenever I leave my house and I see people staring at me. It's deep within me. It resonates deep within the annals of my mind and the reservoirs and the recesses of my soul of what it means to be a black man here in America. And I'm gonna make you feel me. I'm gonna make everybody understand what it's like. Because there is no choice but to pay up. There's no choice but to cut the check. Cut the check. Don't buy white. Don't buy white. Don't buy white. The vestiges of slavery are current and to this very day felt all around the country on every level across the whole gambit. You name it. My parents and my grandparents suffered a life resulting from Jim Crow segregation and oppression. The black man and the black woman have been so irreparably harmed because of racism and families completely and utterly destroyed because of it, that we are still rebuilding our self-dignity and self-pride and awareness of what it even means to be a person, much less a black person in this country. We didn't get to this position all by ourselves. We didn't get to the position where we're here demanding reparations on our own. There was processes that were enacted. There was systematic oppression, discrimination, and segregation that caused us to have to march on the Capitol to make these demands to cut the check. And don't buy white until you make it right. You caused us to do this.
Come on, brother.
You brought this on yourself. This is all blood money. When you look around, all of it. So we're here to make a demand. Cut the check. Don't buy white. Don't buy white. That's the battle cry. That's the anthem, because we can cripple this economy when we stick together and understand that the black person has $2 trillion
We control 2 trillion. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? This country worships money. We control what they worship. We control $2 trillion in retail sales in this country. When we understand that, because everybody knows that except us collectively, we will take this country over. We will take back what's ours, what we developed, what we created, not only financially, emotionally, and spiritually, but culturally. This is mine. That's my house. The White House, my people built that. They built that Capitol that you see in the background. This is all mine. And I'm coming to make the claim on what's mine. I don't need your approval because I've been signed off by a higher power. He approves it. The time is now. Don't buy white till they make it right. So we have to understand, my people, and I'm going to end with this, that this system of behavior called white supremacy has evolved by a tiny majority of people on the planet who are genetic recessive to the majority. And so these behaviors that are destructive and oppressive and hold non-white people down are done for the purposes of white genetic survival. And so we ask, when are they going to stop acting this way? When are these behaviors going to change? When are they going to stop treating non-white people like this? But when we understand that these behaviors are because of the primal instinct of genetic survival, then you understand these behaviors are not going to stop. They're not going to stop. They're going to continue. So we have to understand, first and foremost, that we as a people have to be very aware. And we need to learn how to first take ourselves very, very seriously. We have to learn how to respect one another, and we have to learn how to respect ourselves, first and foremost. And I would say even to respect white people, but be aware and understand that it's like with competitive sports. When you are on an opposing team, whether it's football, basketball, or baseball, understand you respect your opponent that you're playing against, but understand they are playing against you. They're competing against you. They're playing against you. And as long as we remember that and don't forget that they are in the opposing team, we can still hold our heads high with dignity, with respect, self-pride, and self-awareness, and understand that their best interest is not in ours. And we can come together, stick together collectively to take back what's ours, and understand that controlling $2 trillion in retail economy, wholesale economy in this country is enough to cripple this country. When we put that power together, when we pull it, because we've done it, we have the blueprint. If you're with me, say, yes, sir. Say, don't buy white till they make it right. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter? Black Lives Matter? Just in case y'all forgot.
Ooh, it's hot. It's hot. Hold on. Jeez. It's hot. Ooh, Brother Mark. Brother Mark. Did you call him genetically recessive? Brother Mark, did you say that? Brother, did you quote Dr. Francis Wellesley? Did you say that? Okay. Colored confrontation ISIS papers. Hashtag. That's a quote. That's a quote. I need you to know that. I need you to understand that. Whew, the mic is hot. The mic is hot. Jeez. Let me just make it clear to you. Brother Mark is talking about a group of people, a small group of people who hold wealth. And he's wanting to, I've learned this term now that I've become a mother. It's called to disengorge. Okay, a disengorge is when a mother is engorged, that means that she has the capacity to feed, and she is full, and it's so full that she literally has to let down so that she can release the fullness, the overfilling of milk that she has to supply with her baby. The food, the money that America has for the people that have been freed. The descendants of the freedmen is so full, they don't even know what to do with it. You know how I know? You know how I know America doesn't know what to do with your money? Because they sent $46 billion to Ukraine. 78? Oh, I'm sorry. Did we update? And we just pledged another 800. So America doesn't know what to do with the money they're supposed to pay to repatriate black freedmen, descendants of slaves. They've sent $78 billion to Ukraine. Those people don't vote, but guess what? They're going to tell you when election times come. Oh, well, before we talk about reparations, make sure you vote. Are the people in Ukraine voting? No, I don't think so. They're just getting a handout called aid, and they're being well taken care of and looked after and supported by your tax dollars. But this country, when it comes to you, wants you to vote first and talk about it later. We'll get you on the back end. Okay, well, yeah, I'm gonna hold you. Yeah, but okay, but before that, November 15th, let's talk about the ballot. Before we talk about your reparations, let me make sure I get elected first. We'll get back to you. We'll get back to you. Why do they keep telling black Americans, we'll get back to you? What's that about? We'll get back to you. We're tired and we're done. Brother Rashad said this is the last generation that won't have reparations. This is the last generation of black Americans who will not get reparations. We have come to collect our check. It is time to disengorge this country of the wealth that they are wrongfully holding. It's time for them to release that into this community. And guess what? They're not going to be okay until they do it. See, Brother Mark talked to you about a small 1% population that's sitting on their boats and they're wealthy. But guess what? There's another group of people. They're angry and mad as hell because guess what? They don't have a boat. They don't have a window or a pot to piss in and a window to throw it out of. Those are the people that came here on January 6th that were rounded up by a man named Donald Trump, who was speaking to what he called, I believe, the lowest white man. And he was telling them, y'all do know these black people not doing too bad. You might want to catch up. Let me help you out. There's some people who are just miserable and they're not doing well either, because when the factories closed up, their jobs left too. And so there's some people, the lowest white man, who feel like the country has turned their backs on them as well. Donald Trump is rounding them up. He is their leader, and he's letting them know you need to collect, because if not, these black people are going to take everything from you. He's pitting us against them. He's trying to make it a us versus them situation. But that's not the case, because if you've got 800 million to pledge to Ukraine, you've got 76 billion you've already sent over, then my problem isn't the lowest white man in Philadelphia or in Pennsylvania somewhere in the boondocks. My issue is with you, because you're the one holding the purse strings and writing the checks, and you keep sending the money elsewhere. So if you've got the money, it's time to give it to. Because before they kept telling black people, well, we just don't know where we would find the money for reparations. We just can't, there's nowhere to, we don't have that. The national debt is so high. As a matter of fact, we're standing in front of the John Wilson building, and it's actually got the DC residents' tax dollars paid. There's another calculator here in DC that tells you what the national debt is, and it says how many trillions of dollars the national debt is. So we sorry black people, we can't find the money to give to you. We want to give you, we want to help you, but we just can't find it. But they found that money for Ukraine. So if they can find the money for Ukraine, they can find the money for black people and descendants of the enslaved. Brother Walker, are you ready? Let's get it.
Don't buy white. Don't buy white. So my name is Carlos Walker. I did 13 years in prison. That's a part of our enslavement now. I'm gonna tell you the reason why we are owed the money that we are owed. One, slavery. That's 244 years. Two, think about Jim Crow. My parents, who passed at the age of 80 and 79, these people were part of that crowd that had to do less than and then still be treated as slaves, basically, or second-class citizens. Then think about mass incarceration. where they drop drugs in our neighborhoods, where they intentionally, your government, there's documents about this. This ain't just me talking. This is something that's documented and you can go through. They created TV shows right now called Snowfall based on this. How they dropped crack cocaine in our communities. How heroin was dropped in our communities. We're old not just for slavery. Slavery is just the beginning part of it. Then look at the vestiges of everything else that happened. The reason why we are going through the things that we are going through right now, or why immigrants are able to come here and benefit, is because we.
That's why I'm here, bro.
The reason why immigrants were able to even come here and benefit was because of what we have laid down, the foundation that our forefathers have laid down, but also because of what God has actually allowed us to do. There's no group, I heard my man say earlier, that there's no group of people that have done what we have done other than your Israelites in the Bible, and that is who we are. A people that have came from before slavery. They were scientists, doctors, things of that nature, kings, queens. Then they came here and became enslaved. And what we are the descendants of slaves who are owned by this community, this country. There are other people who look like me from other countries that say we are not even old. That's a lie. They're old as well in their countries. But you got to think about who we are, the people that they're even looking at. When we stand up and we don't continue to wait, because God has actually raised us for a reason. When we don't wait no more and we start demanding what's ours, then it's then that we get it. Boycott. Don't buy white.
Make it right.
Don't buy white.
Make it right.
We should boycott as soon as Reese said, as soon as them people from DC give us every name of every company that has created or that was in slavery and pouring into it, we supposed to get paid, but we supposed to boycott each and every one of them businesses. Why? Because we're old. I think my man said something about DC taking and creating a fund off of the taxpayers. We shouldn't have to pay not one dime. Why would we come out of our pockets to pay us? That does not make sense. So what's owed needs to be paid now. Reparations. Reparations. What we are called to do is get what's ours. God has already instilled each and every one of us what's in us to get it. The question is how do we get it? And after we get it, how do we keep it? It's not for us to give back. When we get paid, we're supposed to take this and make sure that we get generational wealth where it never, ever run out ever again for our children's children. It said a parent should leave an inheritance to their children's children. This is what we are doing. This is the reason why we are old. And after that, it should never go back to what it has been. Our God has been a great God. We've come from slavery through Jim Crow all the way up to where we're at now, in spite of what these people have done to us. And it's up to, say it again, and look good. Damn good, excuse my language, look, in doing so. But what we are owed is what they're gonna pay us. It's not if, it's when. It's coming. But it's up to us to prepare for it. Peace and blessings. Love y'all.
All right, Brother Walker. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See, when you write a demand letter, I know a little bit about this. When you write a demand letter, the attorney wants to collect all of your medical bills. The attorney pulls together from any place that you went to treatment, any hospital you went to, they collect your medical bills so they can assess what your damages are. They want to know how hurt are you. And right now, what we've been doing is laying out the case for what the damages have been to Black America throughout the years. Whether it's through Jim Crow, whether it's from private banks, whether it's from government entities, from the actual institution of slavery itself, whether it's from the actual banks that were refusing to give loans, across the board, no matter what entity it is, we're laying out the harm that's been done and the damages, so that when we set our demand out and say what we are owed, what that number looks like, we can lay out the track record and what that number, and across the board, how each segment of history of money that was stolen, we can lay that out. And so we're getting ready to hear from our last speaker, Brother Joshua, so we can lay out the last of our demands on today. And we are here, and we're going to let it be heard and let it be said. Brother Joshua, you ready? All right. Tell them, don't buy white.
You know what's interesting about that call is when you think about how far, let's say, white-owned business permeates. Well, Brother Derek talked about the wealth of America and the wealth distribution of America. And we talked about the American, well, let's say the Black, because we don't have data disaggregated, but the Black percentage of that wealth being only a small percentage, a small fraction in the, few trillion, whereas white American wealth is way over 100 trillion. So even when we think about not buying white, what does that mean? That means, okay, we don't buy toilet paper, we don't buy tissue, we don't buy cell phone service, we don't buy gasoline, we don't buy gas that heat your house, we don't buy. So where that in itself lets you know that we don't have any ownership equity in America. But how is that? How is that when we built America? We've been here longer than anybody. Even longer than people who are calling themselves white. Because it's interesting. People will call themselves white as a way of entering a privileged class, because they know there are advantages to whiteness and disadvantages to blackness. So people will call themselves white even though they just came here yesterday. They just came here. Their mama just came here. Their grandparents just came here. But they immediately they know to access whiteness.
Right.
And then you have some other people here, they know that there's disadvantages to being labeled black, because these are what we call vestiges of slavery, or what we call badges and incidents of slavery. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Congress has a constitutional obligation, I will call it an obligation, to eradicate all badges and incidents of slavery. This is through the 13th Amendment. It's the Section 2 of the 13th Amendment. Basically gives Congress the right to eradicate all badges and incidents of slavery. This is coming through. We can take it back to the consolidated cases of 1883. We can talk about Jones versus Mayer in 1968. That was right after they killed King, where basically the Supreme Court gave a favorable ruling to end Jim Crow discrimination. But they cited that Congress has the authority to enact the necessary legislation to eradicate all badges and incidents of slavery. So what are the badges and incidents? We talked about it. We heard from them today. The brother just got finished talking about the prison system. Well, actually, in the 13th Amendment, there's something called the exception clause, where you can legally allow slavery to continue if it's for basically when you imprison somebody, you can do slavery there. And so that's how we know that the chattel slavery system, though it was ended legally in 1865 through the ending of the Civil War and the 13th Amendment, well, we know that in that clause, they transitioned to the convict leasing system, where you were working on the same plantation, possibly, that
After you were supposed to have been free, now they just make up a law and put you in jail. Actually, I have an uncle. Well, I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna say something different. My dad was telling me when he used to live in Louisiana. My grandfather was stationed in Louisiana, and my dad was growing up. He was like, I know when it's time to get ready to harvest some sugar, because they just started locking up the black folks down there. Because they needed some people to go and work to pick that sugar. But this is a badge of slavery. This is a way to continue the slave system that's still embedded in our society. Another badge and incident of slavery, and this is the number one that we need redressed with the reparations program, and that is the wealth gap. We talked about the wealth gap extensively, but this is all of this this huge disparity of wealth is not because the freedmen, the American freedmen, are inherently deficient. We are inherently ignorant. We are inherently somehow like subhuman or some beast of burden. We just supposed to be somebody's work beast. That's not where that gap exists from. That gap exists from generation to generation of harms and disadvantages and being locked out. You know, the brother Derek talked about being locked out of the New Deal, being locked out of the. You think about every generation, there's a new wave of wealth building, whether it be when people were getting homes through the GI Bill, and now people were getting access to government-backed loans and able to start businesses. We were locked out of it. So we were locked out of that next generation, whether it be Generation X, being passing the wealth on to it was the baby boomers that were born. So they were the ones that were being able to benefit off those who got those benefits. Then now, my generation, Generation Z, and Generation X and all of that, this generation should be benefiting off of what the baby boomers are leaving. Why? So what we know is there's $70 trillion worth of wealth that's being transferred to the next generation, and some of that is in vivo transfers, which means in the lifetime. But what we're inheriting is not that. What we're inheriting largely is debt. So what the brother was just saying about the children, the parents should leave inheritance to their children. Well, we're receiving inheritances. It's just we're receiving debt. We're receiving the inherited debt of actually tangible financial debt. A lot of our people, what was that song? What was that song? Papa was a Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
Wherever he laid his hat was his home, and when he died,
All he left us was alone.
that's right. But see, when I heard that, I was like, he left us with the loan. Like, we got to repay this loan back, And that's really what it was. Like, America stole something from us. They took something from us, and it's like we had to pay in advance. We had to give them a loan of our time, our energy, our life energy, which would have created a wealth. And we're just left, the descendants are left having to pay the loan. Ain't that something? And so, that's part of the badges and incidents of slavery. I mean, and so this is what I want people to understand. When you're making your call for reparations, you want it to be where you can speak the language of a person that's making the law, and they'll be like, damn, you know what? Excuse my language. Maybe you could be like, you know what? They got me, because people, especially when they don't want to do anything for you, when you kind of getting it wrong, they'll just let you sit there in that. But once you know how to call them on their BS, now they have to play a different game on you. So there's some legislation that needs to move forward, and that is consisting of Congress needs to make a resolution where they announce what the badges and incidents of slavery are. What are the badges and incidents of slavery? Let me tell you one reason why this is key. The one reason why this is key is because reparations is, people will make the excuse, well, we don't know how to do reparations. We don't know who will get reparations. Well, we know how to determine that. Because those people who come from the people who descend from those who endured chattel slavery, those people who are called American free today. And that class of people is the class of people that is owed to debt. So how do you figure it out? Well, who has generational ties to the badges and incidents of slavery in America, and who doesn't? It's that simple. Reparations is to repair the damages done by the institution of chattel slavery and the badges and incidents of slavery. That's the best way to describe how a reparations program should go down. What else did I want to talk about today? I wanted to talk about that particular term, American freedom. I wanted to talk about the status issue of freedom, because I think people get race confused with status. Going back into when you know how to call people on their BS. The race game is a BS game that was always played on us. We never asked to be called Negro, black, colored, all this kind of stuff. That was something that was put on us for a particular purpose. We never asked, and so what makes a person white? Why does a person get to be white? Why do you want to label somebody else as black? Because you want to put somebody in a hierarchy system. You want to put somebody in a system where you have privilege and someone else has the detriments. You want somebody to create the food and you just want to eat. Well, the status supersedes race, because now let's just talk about this. So let's just say if a person comes to this country and they're coming from the continent of Africa and they say, well, I want reparations too because y'all saying it's for black people. Am I not a black person? What would y'all say?
Oh.
They owe it, but from their country.
Okay, I agree. So what the difference of what you're saying is, you have a racial classification in America that's different from your relationship to being owed something in America. Your status. So let me break status down. Let's say you go to war and you come home. What will be your status? Your status is veteran. Let's say you get out of the military. What is your status? Okay. It depends on how you get out. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. But okay, let's say you work for 30 years for the government and you say I'm done. What's your status? Are you still an American? Are you still black? Are you still white? Are you still? Now let's say you came to America and you weren't born here. What is your status? Immigrant. Okay. So these are all different statuses we operate with, right? So that's what we're saying. Freedman is a status. That's a status that is only limited to the people who are whose ancestors were enslaved, and they descend from people who were enslaved in America. So that's why we have to understand that when we're having a conversation about reparations, it needs to be about the status as opposed to race. Race the race system is a badge and incidence of slavery, period. So America's still operating where it classifies people based on the system of advantage and disadvantage is a relic of the slave system that they use to determine who would be capable of being enslaved and who would not. Because that's why you didn't have white slaves in America. So when we're having a conversation on reparations, don't let people talk to you and get you sidetracked on the race part. Because if you look at what's going on in America, you got people like Bloom, the people who went at the Supreme Court to get the Supreme Court to rule that college admissions should not consider race as a factor. Anyways, they should not. Basically, they threw a monkey wrench into how college admissions were using affirmative action. But I got to be honest, we know that wasn't even really benefiting us like that anyway. Because the numbers showed that, and even those colleges admitted that their affirmative action program and then their admissions operations were not meant to be remedial. In other words, they weren't doing it to try to get more black folks in college. They didn't care nothing about that. They were just doing diversity for diversity's sake. So essentially what I'm saying to you is we got to get specific out here. You got to get specific. You got to clean up your language. And the reason why is because people that want to deny us justice continuously are devils and snakes. And we have to operate properly to get around that. And the way we do it is we smarten up and open the market up. So I don't have anything else to say after that. I'm gonna give it back to our brother Rashad.
Give a hand clap for him coming. Absolutely. Family, what can I say? That's Brother Josh. He's known as the mastermind, as you can see, for obvious reasons. The brother's just intellectual. And it's always good to meet a fellow intellectual, but when you meet a fellow intellectual that's about reparations, man, that's powerful. Family, thank you for this segment of the National Reparations March. We're going to move to our panel next, and then we're going to get ready to wrap things up. You know, the rain had us starting a little late, but we're going to continue to make it do what it do. So if I can have my panelists approach the stage, and we will begin our panel discussion. Thank you.
I got a letter from the government the other day. I opened and read it.